So we've got a massive market that's growing hugely that New Zealand is very underrepresented in, but has shown, with the likes of Xero and Pushpay and a whole bunch of other companies, that actually we can do this and well on a world stage from day one.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and today we have back in the studio Brett Roberts. How are you, Brett?
I'm very good, thank you, Paul. It's good to be back.
Very cool to have you here. Nice to catch up, and always fun and insightful discussions. Maybe before we jump in, you can let listeners know where you fit into this big wide world of tech in New Zealand.
Oh, cool. Right, so I guess I've been in the big wide world of tech in New Zealand for a fair while now, a decade or two and a half. And right now, my role, Paul, is I'm Community Director for Kiwi SaaS, which is a joint venture between the New Zealand Government and the New Zealand Software as a Service sector. That's
very cool. It's great to see you building that community out, and everything that can help grow our software sector in a good way should yield some dividends for the sector, right?
Absolutely. I can bore you with a whole bunch of numbers later on around how big the sector is and what it might be and what it means for jobs and our kids and their kids, and we should have that conversation.
Awesome. I look forward to that. You're always good having your finger on the pulse with where things are going and where the numbers are at. Before we jump in further, let's just say thank you to our show partners, Vodafone, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, Gorilla Technology, and Deal. So thanks for their support of the New Zealand Tech Podcast and more broadly of the technology and innovation ecosystems here in New Zealand. Now, jumping in to start with, a couple of local product releases. We don't talk so much about gadgets on the show these days, but we all need to use varying bits and pieces of technology. And we've seen a bit of activity, I guess, when it comes to streaming in New Zealand. And Amazon have finally, after many years, launched their Fire TV range in New Zealand. So they've got two products, the 4K streaming stick. So this is an HDMI stick that you can plug into an existing smart TV or a dumb TV or a projector, or whatever else you've got that takes an HDMI input, I suppose.
Right.
And this, we've got the 4K variant, and then it's coming in around $109, and then a full HD one at $69. We've seen Google with their Chromecast with Google TV coming in at quite similar price points. Really pleasing to see Amazon sort of fully into the market, I suppose. The Fire TV's been a great product for a long time, and I can't remember how many years ago it was when they first launched. But I remember getting one in from the US and trying it out, really good experience. Probably the main product we haven't really seen land here, which competes with what Amazon are doing and also with Google, has been the Roku product, and they've had their little Roku TV box and then onto sticks going for many years. The Fire TV has a level of voice control, and you've got your range of the usual sort of apps. I think there is a bit of a variance in terms of what the apps are that are available for New Zealand. So I've only just had a kind of a quick play with it so far, but it certainly looks like a pretty slick product. The thing that was surprising, wasn't it, Brett, when we plugged it in? We've got a Vion TV here in the studio, one of the roaming TVs around the office, and was quite surprised that when we were setting up the Fire TV stick, it listed Vion as a brand that it can control the volume and so on, so that the remote is basically a programmable remote to a degree, sort of automatically. unfortunately, in the case of the Vion we had, because there are so many different ones with different variants, it's not like buying a Samsung or a real name brand TV that they're all very consistent, because they're just rebadging other people's leftovers, however you want to put it. So unfortunately, that feature didn't work, but it seems like it will work with probably about half a dozen different models that came up in the listing there. So it's very interesting, as I've yet to see Vion sort of supported by anything. Even if you go to the warehouse that sells them and you buy one of their universal remotes, they don't have a universal remote that necessarily recognises Vion either, which is rather an interesting conundrum.
I was impressed as you were just stepping through the setup process. Actually, it looked really slick, both just the flow, but actually the actual interface was nice, and it was, there was a QR code to help people along. It's actually one of the better user experiences I've seen of things like that. And just for your edification, Paul, November the 19th, 2014 was when Amazon released its first Fire Stick, so almost 8 years ago.
Yeah, okay. And I wonder whether they had the box even earlier than that.
Oh, they probably did, actually. Good point.
Before the stick was the box. But
that's product progression, right? Box, stick.
Yeah. I
don't know what comes after that.
These things shrink, don't they? So, but yeah, look, it's good to see New Zealand sort of finally getting included there, and now we've got both of them in the market. We maybe see a bit more competition, but certainly they're quite reasonable price points, and it reminds me of when we first really started seeing the smart TVs coming into the market. One of my comments was, well, you buy a smart TV at some point in time, what's built into it is no longer going to be much use, and so why would you buy a smart TV in the first place? Well, now from most of the major manufacturers, you're not going to find anything that that isn't smart. But even if you've got a smart TV now, it may no longer be very smart. So this allows you to bring that old TV back to life.
Make your TV smarter.
Makes it very smart, voice control and so on. So looks like there's a reasonable range of bits and pieces in there. What do we got? I think they've now got TVNZ and 3 Now as options. But no Neon yet for the New Zealand market. So it'll be interesting just to follow that and see how long that takes. Sky Sport now, I believe, as well. So the support for what you'd need in New Zealand is certainly coming through reasonably quickly.
It's probably what took it so long, trying to negotiate rights stuff or whatever it might be, and
get those
New Zealand's
apps
an
built
absolute nightmare.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Good to see. Now the other thing from a product perspective, caught up with the team from Huawei last week, and you might be wondering, well, why would you be talking to them? They're not really selling a whole lot of phones and whatnot anymore. But they are continuing to release a range of things. So they've got a new laptop coming into the New Zealand market. They're continuing to innovate on the watch front. It's probably sort of their standout area because of their smartwatches having a lifespan of sort of between one and 2 weeks. And there really isn't anybody else in the market that has been able to do that sort of thing with a reasonably capable watch. There are some sort of challenges in terms of on Android, you need to sort of sideload apps for the watches, which I'm never super keen on encouraging folks to do that. The iOS app is there in the App Store, but their Android app in Google Play is quite dated. But it's their noise-cancelling earbuds that have arrived first. Brett, you got your hands on there, the FreeBuds Pro 2.
I got my hands on them.
They're quite a sort of quite a tidy, slick-looking device, and they are quite high end from all accounts, and there's looks like quite a big effort has gone into that. There's sort of $400, but they come down to a lower price point. Their lowest end FreeBuds SE product, I think, is coming in about $99 in the New Zealand market. So we're kind of seeing what we see from the likes of Apple and Samsung when it comes to sort of a bit of a selection in terms of earbuds. I'll be very interested in their sub $99 product, whether it kind of works. The other ones that we've been thrown that come in at that price point tend to be really disappointing. Most of them, I think there's one or two that those lower price points that folks seem to find are workable. But for something at the higher end in terms of good battery life, good Bluetooth, both from picking up your voice and listening to music, because most of those lower price point ones, they might be okay for listening to a bit of music, but any sort of noise cancelling capability or good quality voice, that kind of tends to go out the window.
And also there's Bluetooth chipsets and there's Bluetooth chipsets, right? Just
seems
from
to be a bit of variation.
Connectivity perspective and how well behaved they are. These are nice, mate. I have to say, like the design is beautiful. The out of box experience is great, and the minute you open the little whatever you call that thing up that they sit in, I get a little pop up on my Windows 11 laptop, ask me if I want to pair them. So that whole integration thing with Windows is pretty sweet as well.
Yeah, nice to see Windows has sort of moved along a bit on that front.
Exactly.
Got a little bit modern there.
Any improvement to Bluetooth is a good thing.
Yeah. Good to see that coming through. I'm kind of fascinated to see how Huawei evolves as a business over the years ahead. Seems that they will continue to play a very key part within China and probably across some of the other countries.
Countries haven't banned them yet
in Asia, where they don't have the same issues on that smartphone front as they do with the rest of the world, due to them not being able to support the Google Play Store at this point in time. So it's good to see. And quite fascinating how they've really doubled down on the smartwatches. And but we'll look at that maybe another episode. Now onto other topics. There always does seem to be a lot going on in this world of tech, and quite often the Americans are part of it. And as we were sort of just talking about between Huawei and the US stirring things up, and there's sort of really been some pretty big news. I think it's kind of, I'm sort of struggling to get my head around it in a way. And this seems to be that the US are really trying to take control of chip manufacturing, microchip manufacturing, and so we've seen this influx of funding come in the US, and Intel and others being heavily incentivized to build their own fabrication factories or plants in the US. Now those things take years and years to build, but meanwhile we've seen China sort of starting to get up to speed with a level of chip production. And this has been, fascinating, because the Chinese companies, they might not start at the front, but often they do very, very well. And we're sort of starting to see, that across, many fields. And it's fascinating looking at the auto industry at the moment, and seeing the Chinese players start to come through. I'm spending a little bit of time with one of the MG EVs this week, and it sounds like a British brand, but it's a
Don't be fooled.
Chinese company, these days, and BYD seem to be moving very quickly into the market here in the vehicle front, and so it will be. I'm not sure anyone can really predict how things will play out in that auto market. But it does seem a little bit like Japan's days are, of dominance are very, very numbered. And really, it's gonna come down to, I'm sure, all sorts of factors. But I think we will see, the players that have been dominant over the past 30, 40 years. That will be very, very different for the next 30 or 40 years, and we'll continue to see lots and lots of changes. But China's opportunity to get into chip manufacturing right now is quite reliant on the expertise of a lot of Americans, and so that's really where this sort of big news comes in, is that US is banning the export to Chinese firms, not only of high-end chips, so chips coming out of America that maybe could get used in military or other applications, but now it's down to the engineering support. And so American engineers wanting to be involved in the way I'm reading it anyway, Brett, and I don't know how you take it, is that those American sort of experts that are needed in order for China to have a chip sector are basically being sort of called home, and that they're being told that if they work in that sector for China, they could get into all sorts of hot water, whether it's losing their American citizenship, or if they go back to the US, getting into some fairly hefty legal trouble. So this is going to be huge if it's as successful as sort of first reports online suggest, which suggests there's been a mass wave of resignations across the chip sector in China.
So I found this story really interesting when it dropped a few days ago for a couple of reasons. One was I was amazed that mainstream press hadn't picked it up. This is one of the most seismic things I've ever seen from a sanctions in general, let alone in the tech sector. And effectively what the United States has apparently done is they've added around about 30 semiconductor companies in China to a thing called the Unverified List, which is run by the Bureau of Industry and Security. And that immediately means that a whole bunch of export things can't happen for them. One of those things is that most people probably don't realise, but the machines that manufacture chips, which use technological photolithography, there's effectively one really big manufacturer of those machines. It's a company called ASML. They're based in the Netherlands. The machines take 9 months, I read somewhere recently, to manufacture. Anyway, the Americans are leaning on that organisation not to ship any more machines to China, and one of the ways in which they're doing that is they have apparently given people the options of retaining their American citizenship or green card and not working for a Chinese chip company, or choosing to work for a Chinese chip company and giving up the latter. That's a really, really big deal. The other thing too, as you said, was they're prohibiting the shipment of certain high-end chips to China. So it's not just weaponry, it's also AI systems, because the big battle that's going on right now in the tech space is artificial intelligence, and China are probably, I think in some ways, leading the pack when it comes to between them and the United States. So this is a really, really big deal. I have no idea the impact it'll have on supply chains over time, but as you know, a huge amount of semiconductor manufacturing happens in China. So yeah, who knows where this might play out, but I've never seen something this spectacular, sudden. It wasn't exactly signalled as far as I could see. Everyone seemed to be surprised about it. And the ripples from this will spread a very long way over a very long period of time. So it's interesting watching America flex its muscles, I guess, on the sanctions front. And I would imagine if you were a Chinese-based semiconductor manufacturer or reliant on Chinese-based semiconductor manufacturing, this would be a very big deal. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, really it's huge. And, from that sort of political standpoint, it's probably not the sort of thing most folks were expecting of no. Biden. I mean, it seems to be something that potentially has a much bigger impact than the things that Trump put into play.
Oh, by a long shot, right? I think. Absolutely.
It's just insane.
Yeah.
From that scale perspective. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting little time ahead. And I guess the other pieces. We just haven't really heard much back from China on it. So whether that's something that's still to come, whether they're playing it down.
See what the retaliation is.
Yeah. So we live in interesting times, don't we?
We might be going back to analog dials and things in cars. You know,
Now, I was fascinated to hear in the BBC reading through some stuff there about an Indian village, Maharashtra, where they apparently go offline daily to help people actually do people type stuff. Quite a kind of a bold move, really, for for this village. There are about 3,000 people, made up largely of farmers and sugar mill workers, is what the BBC states. And I guess they've got together their leaders for the village, and they decided that they should have a couple of hours every day without screens and so on. So they drop offline apparently 7 p.m. to 8:30. So about an hour and a half a day.
Interesting. I hadn't seen this story before, but it's an interesting concept to get people talking. It'd be fascinating to understand the background about what prompted this. But what I think is even more interesting is the roll-on effect it's had, where I see in the UK they're predicting there could be 3 and 4 hour power cuts. So it looks like the UK might be implementing no screen time for 67 million people every evening, which could be interesting. So these little changes in a village in India have had a huge impact on a nation a long way away. So look at that.
Yes, there's a bit of drama going on in the UK, isn't there? There has been a lot of sort of impact, right, of screen addiction and these sorts of, these all the different, things that sort of social media has brought, and just, access to sort of tap into an unlimited amount of information and learning.
Dopamine addiction.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it is good to stop and sort of think about these things, whether it should be something that's sort of state sanctioned. That's well, I guess there have been levels of that in in the likes of China, haven't there? In terms of all sorts of rules and controls around what youngsters can do and. So gaming. On how much time you can spend gaming before you get into trouble and so on. But look, some of these things have some good intent. Whether it necessarily plays out that way when you try and force it on a population, I guess that's probably open to much study and much debate. And this is a fairly small scale one, so we may never see any data back on it. But I think the positive point of it is to give it some thought in terms of are there any tweaks that you might need to make in your own home or family? And I've found it quite fascinating, actually. We use a range of technological kind of tools in the home to help limit the amount of time that gets spent doing certain technological things. Look, it's part of the mix. I think as much as possible, you want people to of whatever age to kind of figure out for themselves what works well and appropriately for them. But I guess I've got to see a whole variety, talking to other parents and interacting with other families, and you definitely see some variances. And there was one home I was in recently where the parents were not native English speakers, and it kind of felt like that the power in the household was with the 11-year-old rather than with the parents, and that the youngster not only had mastered the English, the local lingo reasonably well, but also very adept from the technology standpoint. So these parents were pulling their hair out a little bit.
My kids have all been through the same thing. I remember sitting at home one day, or at work one day, and my son popped up on Facebook, except he was supposed to be at school, and I said to him, on Messenger, "Aren't you supposed to be at school?" And he said, "Oh, we are, but we've just worked out how firewalls work." So, "Oh, okay, I think maybe shut everything down now, mate." But
Yeah. And look, there can be some elements there that are actually quite good, right? Kids working out how to break and bypass these things. There's some good technical skills that are built up doing that.
Right.
Even if you weren't exactly putting those things in place for their
educational purposes.
Educational reasons. So there you go. Now we must talk once again about Elon Musk. He's been all over Twitter over the last few days, and getting some interesting attention. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. What's your take on what Elon's up to at the moment, Brett? What are the highlights for you?
I think I've made clear my viewpoints of Elon Musk in the past, but what a fascinating creature. So he's painted himself into a corner with the Twitter purchase, and I can't help but wonder or think or feel that a lot of the noise he's making at the moment is distraction from that for whatever reason. I think there's a whole lot of chickens, very, very large, very, very expensive chickens about to come home to roost for that. He's about to pay $40-something billion for a company that's worth a quarter of that, which would have to go down as one of the stupidest deals of all time. He's been channeling Vladimir Putin, which I think is an interesting thing and a very terrible thing, and potentially even a treasonous thing. There seems to be some pretty good evidence out there that some of the talking points he parroted recently around suggesting what Ukraine might have to give up in order to make peace with the Russian aggressors seem to be Vladimir Putin's talking points as well, which is quite fascinating. So Elon Musk as a spokesperson for the Kremlin is something I'm not sure that anyone expected, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. And he's also threatened to potentially turn off Starlink, which of course is their satellite-based internet service for Ukrainians after making all the noise about shipping Starlink equipment into Ukraine, all because they're not paying for it at the moment. And I'm sure Starlink, like many of other Elon's companies, could probably survive without Ukraine's income. And Musk in particular, all of his companies have done very well out of US government sponsorship along the way. So it was interesting to see him play that card first. I might have to turn off Starlink because I don't seem to have any money in the petty cash tin. And then talking on behalf of Vladimir Putin. I had a relatively low opinion of Elon Musk initially, which I didn't think could go too much lower, but surprise, it can. So incredibly smart man, world's wealthiest man. I'm not sure a particularly nice human being. It'd be interesting to see how all that plays out. But wouldn't want to be inside Elon's head at the moment. I think that'd be a very busy place to be. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it is really fascinating to watch some of the stuff and the different moves that he's making. He's it looked like he's thinking there that he can create world peace or something, and it's. He's got a lot of money. Yes, he's very smart on the technical things. But at times it's important to stick to your own lane, and I think
international geopolitics with the threat of nuclear war is one of those times.
Yeah, the Thai cave situation was another one he got a bit carried away on. Yeah. I'm kind of curious how these things play out, because you create enough enemies and you get to a point where nobody wants to buy your product anymore as well, right? So
he's got enough fanboys. I think he might be okay, but I just think there are certain times where people like him should bow out, and this is absolutely, definitely beyond a doubt one of them. He should just, STFU, and just stay in his lane and do rocket things and car things and satellite things.
Yeah, he seems to be quite good at some of that stuff.
So,
yeah.
He's not the most focused of individuals, clearly. But, this was, I think, he veered way outside what he should have, and I think it might come back to haunt him. So we'll see. On
the Tesla front locally, for those that are they're kind of curious with following updates and so on. New Zealand has finally been delivered an update. New Zealand and Australia, maybe one or two other countries, an update that's been available US and some other markets for quite some time, which means you can fire up the Tesla app in your phone if you're paying for the premium connectivity, or you've happened to have got it for free, which is my case based on when I bought the car and so on. And now you can go and actually have a live look at through the cameras that are in the vehicle.
Okay,
So if you've parked in a dodgy neighbourhood and you just want to check there's nobody standing there with a baseball bat or something, then you can do that. Or if you've maybe had an alert triggered on your phone that there's an issue, you can actually live stream the cameras in the car. Which is quite a slick little feature.
That's pretty cool. I remember seeing a guy by the name of Tony Sieber present a few years ago talking about the future of electric vehicles, and he was talking about the concept of, in particular Tesla's case, they think about them as being iPads on wheels, right? And just that whole idea of the value that you can deliver to a platform that happens to be a car by updating the software, and they've really latched onto that, and it's been interesting to see that. Realistically, just about, you know more about EVs than I do, but I can't really point at another EV manufacturer that has leveraged software features and updates to them as Tesla have to continue that value conversation.
Yeah, I mean they just continue to add value, and I think of any of their vehicles, but certainly the Model 3 that I purchased back a little over 3 years ago. When I got that, you had the autopilot capability that could, steer if you're on a highway or motorway and so on. That has improved so much. I drove to Rotorua over the weekend and then back to Auckland, and
sat in the back seat.
Almost. It is so good now at the steering and at adjusting to, if there's speed limit signs up that say, hey, roadworks 50 Ks through here or 30 Ks, it adheres to that. Then when it sees the sign to say it's back up to 100 or, what have you. But one chink in their armour compared to those using Android Auto or CarPlay in a normal vehicle for their mapping is their maps aren't current with the latest highway updates in New Zealand. Yep. So that just can create a few issues. So if you're wanting to use the what's the new Hamilton bypass?
Yep.
So if you want to use that
expressway,
or that's it. The and the new Wellington one as well. What's it called? Something Gully. Someone's going
Transmission
Gully. There we go. Neither of those are fully updated in their map, so it causes some oddities. Yep. Apparently, there is an update coming through, soon. But of course, if you were just using Google Maps with Android Auto or CarPlay, that stuff's just fine.
Exactly.
So what I did, just to avoid any, or too much confusion, is I actually just fired up my normal maps on my phone, sort of alongside, so I could see, what was supposed to be happening. They actually had the roads on there. The roads are on there, but they just haven't sort of flicked the switch that it's all live, and they haven't pushed the update, which is probably one of the few times where you look at what they're doing and it's like, oh, that's a bit backwards, isn't it?
Yeah. You can imagine though where New Zealand sits in the overall priority, like United States and Europe and UK and then there'll be like some guy who actually makes the coffee whose job is on a Saturday morning to come in and do the quick map update for New Zealand, right? I'm sure that's
I hope not. I hope if it's this bad here that it's the same everywhere else in the world, and that they're working on getting there together. Because I think that's pretty slack. They need to be called out for it. So
come on,
Tesla,
Elon,
pull up your socks.
That's right. Stop mucking around with Twitter. Stop mucking around with Vladimir Putin. Stop dicking around with all the Starlink stuff, and just sort out your software in your cars, mate. Thank you.
Yeah. New maps. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I mean, there isn't any reason why that they couldn't be. Smarter if you're going to rely on a locally sort of, cached local, copy of maps, then look, I know in lots of cars you used to have to do it with a CD update and used to spend lots of money, but that's not the world we're in, and they should do, continuous updates or, weekly updates or something. Yeah. So if there's a change that it's
wonder
covered.
If it's some weird licensing thing. The company they license their maps from,
I don't care though.
No, that's from a user perspective. Nobody cares. But I bet you somewhere in the background there's some weird esoteric intellectual property licensing thing in there where I don't know, but I bet you.
Yeah.
Or it's the coffee guy that isn't coming in on Saturday morning.
Well, in theory now, they've got so many vehicles on the road collecting data and so on that they could actually map the whole world. Better than
I think that's the plan. Isn't
better
it?
than Google or anyone else, because they've got the cameras, they can read the signs, they can they can actually capture that data and they feed it back to the their supercomputer and away they go. But they haven't done that yet. Maybe that's on their list for 2023 or 2029 or something. The Metaverse.
Yeah.
What's going on in the Metaverse? We saw an interesting announcement from Meta and Microsoft. You think there's something real happening here with the Metaverse?
I think there's a few interesting things happening. So the one thing that intrigued me was the software update they'd done where all of a sudden now people in the Metaverse have legs. So I thought that was nice. They've added, given everyone legs. And then there was this announcement that Meta and Microsoft were going to partner around the Metaverse. And I thought that was really interesting for a couple of reasons. So one is I am not sure that there are two more polar opposites when it comes to values. Company values between Meta, who I see as being quite an organisation that played quite fast and loose with privacy and a bunch of other things. I've done a bunch of dodgy stuff in the past with Cambridge Analytica, etc. And Microsoft, who I think really have stepped up, particularly since Satya Nadella took over, from the point of view of having a moral compass that kind of aligns. They seem to be a relatively decent company. I mean, they're a big American corporate. They do big American corporate things. But so, that really did look like, I think I described it as kind of an oil and water mix of values, and I really do think it is. But part of me wonders, Meta are betting the business on the Metaverse, right? And they've talked about spending tens of billions of dollars on it. If I was a smart, large, US headquartered software company, looking at some interesting technology built by a company that might be about to put itself out of business by putting too many dollars into it, mightn't be a bad thing to do. Form a partnership and what do they call it? Vulture capital. Maybe come in a little bit later when Meta have spent billions and not got what they wanted. Microsoft have, had in a lot of ways a lead on them from a augmented reality perspective. So I do think it's interesting that they have teamed up with Meta. Sounds like their new devices are pretty good. I still can't see all of the world walking around with a tissue box stuck on the front of their face. I just don't see that happening. But Microsoft had made really big inroads in the enterprise space with their HoloLens and massive inroads in the military space. Right, they've sold hundreds of thousands of them, I think, into military. So there's a company that knows how to do this stuff and how to sell it into enterprise, teaming up with a company that are building some quite interesting stuff, but I think their overall vision is a bit lacking. So part of me looks at it and goes, it's a 1 and 1 equals 3 thing, but another part of me looks at it and goes, it's kind of 2 minus 1 equals 1 if Meta happen to, gazump themselves in this. I'm sure I could figure out who might pick up the intellectual property for a song.
Right.
So, interesting. Another watch this space.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it has been it's been interesting with with Meta being so deeply committed to virtual reality and what we I guess calling the metaverse, but we haven't sort of seen that much that's kind of landed that's actually sort of sticky, right? My son was mentioning the other day around the VR headset, Oculus, and I was thinking, where is it? I haven't picked it up in months. 6 months, 9 months, 12 months.
Most people I know that have one, it's exactly the same. It's not a device that and the new ones are $1,500. They're not cheap.
The enterprise variant, yeah.
So I think that's the challenge. The hardware is expensive, and like all hardware, I'm sure it'll come down in cost, although there's a lot of incredibly sophisticated technology in in those devices. It's not just screens and computing power. So I think that is a challenge, and I'm just not convinced of Meta's overall vision for the metaverse. I don't see people, protesting in the streets at a lack of metaverse and, not being able to get to use something like that. I think, I don't know. I trust Microsoft's vision for how to sell these things into enterprise a lot more than I would Meta's ability to sell them to consumers.
Now, Brett, I need you to tell us what's going on. What are you up to now with
right.
Kiwi SaaS? What's the story?
What's Kiwi SaaS? So Kiwi SaaS, Paul, is a joint venture between the New Zealand government and the New Zealand Software as a Service, SaaS sector, that is intended to basically accelerate the SaaS sector in New Zealand. So I can give you a whole bunch of numbers. Let me floor you with a bunch of numbers. I've talked to them so many times, I've got them memorised. In New Zealand right now, we estimate that there's around about 570-ish SaaS companies doing just software as a service, so not a mixed model. So that number excludes the likes of Datacom and Gallagher's and Tate and others, large companies doing SaaS things but with a mixed model. We think those companies employ around about 12,500 people. This is at the end of last calendar year. And we think that they generate revenue of around about $2.2 billion New Zealand per year. That data it's taken quite a bit of time to aggregate and pull together because the data that's reported to IRD is all mixed in together for tech companies. So it could be someone on the corner repairing screens on iPads and someone on the other corner doing SaaS stuff. So it's taken us a while to pull all that together. Now, the interesting thing is that between 2016 and 2020, those companies grew headcount around about 16% on average per year, each and every year, without any input or assistance effectively from the government. So, and when we started looking at the size of this sector, in fact, the sector didn't even see itself as a sector. We went out and talked to these companies, and they didn't really think about themselves being in the same sort of business. And one of the interesting things around with SaaS companies is the joke I make is they're like humans and budgies. They share about 65% of DNA. So whether you're a fintech, insurtech, medtech, vet tech, auto tech, anything tech, software as a service company, there is more in common that you have with other SaaS companies than there is not. So they all sell to different customers and produce different products in different ways. But actually the journey of spinning up a SaaS company, the challenges they have when it comes to platforms and people and all the other things, product market fit and other things, are actually almost identical. And those people people in those companies can switch between them. A great product manager at Xero can go and work for a startup that has nothing to do with accounting, right? Product management's product management. So the idea of Kiwi SaaS is that what we want to do is sit in between the sector and government and help inform government to make data-driven policy decisions. That might be around immigration, for example, or education. And with the intention of growing this sector massively. So if we've grown it 16% year on year from 2016 2020, what if we could grow it faster than that out to 2030? So we've done a bunch of modelling to figure out what that might look like. And our most optimistic model, and it is optimistic, but actually the reality is we can do this. I mean, look, Xero is my example. Whenever anyone says to me, can we really do this in New Zealand? It's like, go and talk to Rod Drury. We think that we could add potentially between now and the end of 2030 upwards of 60 or 70,000 jobs. The average salary in the SaaS sector today is around about 105K. That's double the New Zealand median wage. Yeah. So they're high-paying jobs. High-paying jobs pay more tax. Tax is what pays for things like schools and infrastructure and all those other things that we love, and also lifts productivity, which is a good thing. New Zealand is a very low productivity nation. In fact, we're slipping backwards productivity-wise compared to OECD nations. And so here we are presented with this opportunity to create lots of high-paying jobs in a nation where, we've got to where we are off the back of dairy and tourism in particular. They may not be the sectors or industries that take us into the future. There are companies out there creating milk without cows, and the whole carbon emission situation could be challenging for our tourism sector over time, particularly long-distance global tourists, international tourists. And so that's what we're here to do, really. There's, I talk about Kiwi SaaS as a team. There's literally 5 of us. Ex-Callaghan Innovation, everyone's got some pretty deep tech sector and SaaS expertise. And that's kind of what we're here to do. So I think of it as kind of engineering a better future for my kids and their kids and their kids. But interestingly, from the point of view of capability development, there are some organisations out there now. The wonderful thing about the SaaS sector is you can get in with a relatively short amount of training. So the best story I've heard so far is a painter, I believe, based in Wellington, who retrained, went through a 4 or 5 month course and is now a software developer earning double what they were before, kind of thing. So Dev Academy in Wellington are doing a ton of this stuff. Mission Ready, based here in Auckland, are doing a lot of good work in this stuff in the short course space at the moment. Around about 75% of Mission Ready's trainees or candidates that they're pushing through at the moment are actually moving from different careers. So they are already in work. People like teachers, for example, looking at exiting the sector they're in today and getting into something that has potentially better future for them. So our biggest challenge is getting more people into these roles. We need to add 20-something people to the sector every single day between now and the end of 2030, right? Which is a massive challenge. But we can do this. The reality is our market share worldwide is less than 0.5% in the SaaS sector. The sector itself will be worth, depending on who you talk to, close to $1 trillion per year by 2025. We're not too far away from that. So we've got a massive market that's growing hugely, that New Zealand is very underrepresented in, but has shown, with the likes of Xero and PushPay and a whole bunch of other companies, that actually we can do this and well on a world stage from day one. So that's what we're here to do.
That's pretty exciting.
It's pretty cool.
What was that growth rate again that you're looking to get it from 16 up to?
Up to around about 19 or even 21%. Now that is massively optimistic. But the reality is, if you go out and talk to any of the SaaS companies out there, their biggest challenge at the moment is people. There is poaching going on between companies, which is not good. So one of the key things, we're building a community, so that's of practitioners, so people that work in the SaaS sector. We're building a community specifically for those people to effectively give back. So someone that's a bit further down their product management career path, we hope will be able to coach others that are a bit more junior in their career. So that's my role. I'm the community director. But we're also looking at how we go and build capability around particularly the short course stuff and potentially build an academy out to help with that. And the other thing we're looking at doing is building a data set. So looking at getting data from these companies because it's clear the data we're getting via IRD and Stats NZ and others is patchy. There's gaps in it. To better understand how the sector's working. So the government can make data-driven decisions around education, around immigration settings and things like that. Move more quickly. Government moves slow. The sector moves quickly. We're trying to speed the former up to match more closely the latter. So.
I'm all for that. That. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that, Brett.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Is it kiwisas.com?
Kiwisas.com.
Kiwisas.com. Folks can find out what's going on.
We're launching the platform, the community platform, next month in November. There's been a ton of work go into that. And what we're trying to do there is make it a safe space for those people to engage, get conversations going. Some of the stuff we've done already, for example, we use what's effectively a speed dating platform called Orbit with 2 eyes to match people in the sector that want to talk to others. And the NPS we're getting out of that, the feedback is incredibly positive. The NPS we're getting out of that is over 90%. Right, it's massively popular. I think Apple's hovers around 70 or 80. So we're very pleased with the engagement and the satisfaction of the people and just clearly the value of those conversations. And this is one of the things we really have worked out as we've been building all this stuff up. There is a bunch of very smart, talented people in the sector in New Zealand that are literally world class and willing to give a lot of that knowledge and expertise and insight back. And we're trying to be the mechanism by which that they can enable that, I guess.
That's great.
It's cool.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us again, Brett. Always good to catch up. Thank you also to our show partners, Vodafone, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, Gorilla Technology, and Deal. And thanks, everyone, for listening in. And just a reminder, most weeks, not this week, but most weeks you can catch live video of the show across by following me on LinkedIn. So look up Paul Spain there. Also, usually across Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We look forward to catching you again next week. All right, see ya.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.